Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. In 2013, the former Grand Mufti of Egypt, Ali Goma, confirmed that the Queen of England is a descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, and cited the genealogy presented by Brooks Baker as his main evidence. And this created a great controversy around the world as to whether this claim was true or not. While some people claim that the whole idea presented by Brooks Baker and Ali Goma is just false and political, others said that the piety of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him may not be necessarily inherited by all his descendants, and so this claim might be true given that Brooks Baker even provided a whole genealogy for this. However, not many people were interested to know the historicity of this genealogy and the claims. So in this video we're going to be discussing the historicity of this genealogy presented by Brooks Baker, and we're going to explain why the Queen is in fact not a descendant of the Prophet peace be upon him. The entire genealogy will be provided in the description. However, to oversimplify, there are three main points of this genealogy which connect the Queen to the Prophet peace be upon him. The first point is that the kings of Seville were descended from Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him. The second point is that Zaida of Seville was the daughter of the king of Seville, and thirdly, the queen descends from Zaida. However, there are many flaws in this genealogy which we're going to be discussing. So firstly, starting from Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, the genealogy shows someone named Zahra bint Hussein bin Hassan bin Imam Ali. Authentic Muslim historians and genealogists do not mention anyone of this name as a child of Hazrat Hussein bin Hassan, and as a result, this character is a fabrication done by none but Brooks Baker himself. Secondly, given that Zahra herself is a fabrication of Brooks Baker, so are all the children attributed to her. In other words, to put it simply, the link between Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him and the kings of Seville is another fabrication by Brooks Baker, and authentic Muslim sources do not mention it at all. In fact, the real family tree of the kings of Seville looked something like this. They were descendants of an Arabian tribe from Yemen named the Lakhmids, and this tribe is famous even in pre-Islamic sources. And it takes its name, and this dynasty takes its name from Ismail bin Abbad al-Lakhmi, and was therefore known as the Abbadid dynasty in honor of him. As for Zaida of Seville, she wasn't the daughter of the king of Seville, but she was the wife of his son and therefore his daughter-in-law. Even if she was his daughter, again, this does not make her a descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, as we have discussed earlier. But the whole confusion started like this. So Muslim historians from the contemporary era of her time wrote that she was the daughter-in-law of the king and the wife of his son Abu Nasr al-Fath al-Mamun. However, some Christian historians mistook it and wrote that she was the daughter of the king of Seville, and Brooks Baker has used the misunderstanding in his genealogy, although in fact she was daughter-in-law of the king, and her ancestry is generally unknown. What is known is that after her husband was killed, she escaped to Castile and took baptism as Isabel and became the mistress of the king of Castile. Lastly, the descendants of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him were well recorded in Muslim states, so if Zaida was actually a descendant, then this must have been recorded somewhere in the sources, but it's not recorded anywhere. Also, it is questionable whether she was Moorish, a term used for Arabian and North African Muslims of Al-Andalus. And this is questionable simply because there were lots of local Christian women who were referred with Arabic names, so Zaida could have been one of them. And she could also have been a Jew, but that's very hard to claim. Secondly, we don't know her father, and that's a fact. Although one Christian chronicler wrote that her father was the Yemeni king of Larida in Spain, and this king wasn't a descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, but then this chronicler is the only one who mentions this, so we don't really know whether it's true or not, but most sources just agree that she was of unknown ancestry. While on the other hand, as mentioned earlier, if she was actually a descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, then historians and genealogists would have mentioned this. Some even think that Zaida was just a Christian woman from Castile who only pretended to be Muslim, and that's why when her city was conquered by the army of Yusuf bin Tafshin, she escaped and fled to Castile and then got baptism there. And also, as a matter of fact, the episode of Zaida's flight to Castile is not properly explained in any source. Now this leads us to another question as to whether the queen actually descends from Zaida or not. This question might seem like some sort of side note, but it's actually quite interesting. That's because the contemporary source Chronicle of the Kings of Leon says that King Alfonso VI of Leon and Castile had 5 legitimate wives and 2 concubines. The source gives the names of wives and the concubines in chronological order and also enlists their children, and it says that Zaida was baptized as Isabel and she was a mistress, a concubine, whereas the king had a wife named Isabel, and this Isabel had 2 daughters, whereas Zaida had one illegitimate son who was later killed in battle with Muslims, and he was childless. So to oversimplify this, the source says that the queen does not descend from Zaida simply because Zaida had only one child who died childless. And although this source clearly says that Zaida and Queen Isabel are not the same person, some historians and some people in general think she is the same person. They say that if they aren't the same person, then who exactly is this Queen Isabel? One source said that she was the daughter of the French king, but chronologically this is impossible. And also French sources do not make mention of such marriage between a French princess and the king of Leon and Castile. However, we do know that Alfonso was planning some sort of alliance with a family from Burgundy, and it is possible that Isabel came from there. So once again, to oversimplify it, the contemporary source says that Zaida and Isabel are in the same persons. And also it is a fact that the two have a gap in chronicler sources. For example, once Zaida disappears, only then the Queen Isabel appears. And that leads some people to thinking that she was actually a wife of the king whom he married after Zaida had died. But this is still some sort of debate which continues even today. You might be thinking the myth of the Queen's descent from Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him is over, but fun fact, no. That's because on another occasion, Ali Goma even said that a Hashemite, a descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him, was once forced to convert to Christianity in Britain, and it is said that he was the Queen's grandfather, or we can say ancestor. However, this is also a myth and is much more easier to debunk simply because there is no descendant of Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him in the Queen's ancestry, and there won't be any unless some fabricated document is brought. I would like to thank all of you for watching, and special thanks to the acknowledgements you can see on my screen.